Hi everyone, and welcome to the session on deploying a static website using S3 and Cloudfront. Before that, let me introduce myself. So, my name is Sandeep, and I work as an engineering manager at Anstack, and I've been working on serverless for the past three and a half years. I come more from a automation background. So I started off with automating deployments for AWS environments and eventually started coding as well. So now I do full stack development and also design solutions based on the application requirement. So in this session, we're going to cover how we'll be able to deploy web applications. So we're going to see sequentially how it can be done and the services involved with it and how these services work. So a bit about myself. Apart from the technical work, I also am a writer. So this is one of my passions. The best thing about that is, especially when you're riding to a hill station, you need to be 100% focused. So it kind of teaches you to be in the moment rather than spreading your thoughts out. And apart from that, I also do craft work, so based on resin or woodcraft and things like that. So let's get started. All right. So this webinar is going to be focusing towards S3 and CloudFront, but this is part one of three. So this entire series is going to guide you through creating a serverless leave application. And we're going to go through all the services involved, what this application is, what it does, and all the other things. So let's get started with it. Yeah. So the serverless leave approval application on AWS.
Sandeep,
Right.
do you want to
Yeah.
share your screen?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought I was sharing. Yeah. So first, we're going to start with the serverless leave approval application. So we're going to walk through what it is, how it works, what is the functionality, and things like that. And then we're going to see a demo of how it works. And then we'll go through the application architecture walkthrough, where I'm going to explain what all the services are involved on the top level. And as and when we go through each course, we're going to see how these services are being deployed, how we use them, and how it works in the entire architecture. So let's get started. Right. So this is the main flow of the application. So basically, there are two flows. So what this application is used for is, let's say the people in your company or people who work for you, they want to apply for a leave. Now, you would want a proper mechanism to keep track of who's applying and things like that, because everybody has some sort of dependency. So you need to make sure that if when people are unavailable, the work still carries on, right? At the same time, you also want to make sure that the people are happy and they're able to take the leaves when it is required. So there are two flows in this. So first is the user flow. So you're going to have a login page, and once you log into that, you're going to reach the home page. And in the home page, you're going to have two things. You're going to have a section where you can request for leave, and then you're going to have a section where you can see whether any leaves are pending for approval or whether it has been approved previously. So when the user requests for a leave, there are two things that can happen. If it is less than 2 days, like if the leave that the user is applying is less than 2 days, it gets auto approved, because that is like a very minimal timeline, and that can be accommodated in time. And these things can happen anytime, right? So a sudden emergency or a bank work or whatever it is, right? These things which require like 1 day to 2 days sleep are pretty common, and that's part of life. So these things can be auto approved. And then anything larger than that, let's say they're going for a function or they're going out of town for a long vacation. So these things would be more than 2 days. So let's say for these kinds of things, you want to make sure that the admin or the supervisor is intimidated, and then there's a manual process to it where the admin is going to approve the leave request, right? And then there's the admin flow. So in the admin flow, it's going to be pretty much the same, except for one change. So the same login page. So after the user logs in, you're going to get the home page. In the home page, the admin is going to have an extra section where he's going to be able to approve the leaves. So let's say I request for a leave that is more than 5 days, and that notification goes to my manager. And then my manager is going to log into the application and see that I have requested for a leave, and if it is reasonable, is going to approve the request. So these are the two flows that we're going to build in the application. So let's see a demo of how it is working now. So this is the demo application link. So let's log in over here. So in my case, the admin and the user are the same person. So we're going to request and approve from the same portal. Yeah, right. Here you can see the previous requests that I have made, and here you can see the pending request that for a leave. Let's say bank work, and let's say Monday. So I just need 1 day of leave. So like I said, anything less than 2 days is going to get auto approved. So once we request for the leave, you will be able to see that in approve request, it is auto approved. Right. So similarly, say for anything that's more than 2 days, let's say the weekend, say I'm taking off the entire week. So when I request for that, in this case, it's not going to get auto approved, and you're going to see that as part of the pending request. Now, as an admin, when the admin logs in, he'll be able to approve it. But in our case, both the admin and the user are the same person, so I'm just going to go ahead and approve it. So once you approve it, the leave request will be approved, and then you'll be able to see that in your approved request. Yeah. So this is how the application works, and now we'll see what all the services involved in the entire application, and then we'll get started with S3 and CloudFront. Right. So coming to the architecture, there are like two sections to this. One is deploying your website and that being accessed from the external world. And then there are the authenticated users. So for authenticated users, you need to use a login mechanism and generate tokens and other things to make sure that only the valid users are able to log in. But there are also generic pages that other people, like general public, will be able to access. Now, to host the website, we're going to use two services. One would be the Amazon S3 bucket, and the other one is the Cloudfront. Now, an S3 is a storage service. So inside that, you create an entity called buckets, and inside each bucket, you can upload a number of files. Now, these files could be your website hosted files, or it could be log storage, it could be videos, pictures, anything of those sorts. So for storing any kind of files, you can use S3. And in our case, we are specifically using it to host the website. So that is how S3 plays a picture in terms of hosting your website. And then coming to CloudFront, CloudFront is a service that is used for caching. So where it helps is, let's take a scenario that your website is hosted in US servers, okay, and you're trying to access it from India. So in case you're not using a CloudFront server and you're accessing the website directly from the US, anytime a user from India is going to access your website, the files will be fetched freshly from the US servers. Right. So this can be time consuming and this is going to affect the performance of all the users. Right. So let's say you are using CloudFront. And what CloudFront does is that it has a caching mechanism, and CloudFront has something called as an edge location. So these edge locations are spread throughout the world, and these act as the caching centers. So let's assume that there's a caching edge location in India, and then you're hosting the same website in US region, but you have connected that to CloudFront. Now, when the first user from India is going to access your website, that request is going to go through CloudFront and hit the US servers. But when it gets the response, it's going to cache that in the India region, right? So what it affects is that the second user and all the other consecutive users after that, when they're trying to access the website, they're going to fetch the information directly from the Indian server. So it's not going to reach the US servers. So this is the advantage you get by using CloudFront. So through this caching mechanism, all your users are able to fetch files in a much faster rate compared to how it was done previously. And also you can use CloudFront to make sure you're only serving HTTPS websites. You can have different encryption mechanisms and all the other features. We'll discuss about it when we are kind of creating the services. So with that being said, let's start creating these services. So in this session, we're going to see how we are going to create the S3 bucket, how we can make that as make the configuration for it to host a website. We're going to upload a static file and see whether that can be fetched. Right. After that, we're going to create the CloudFront, attach that to the S3 bucket, and we're going to use CloudFront website. And after that, we'll upload a React application into the S3 bucket and see how the entire thing works. Okay. Now, let's go to your AWS account and let's go to the S3 buckets. So under the services list, search for S3, and once you click on that, you'll be landing in this page basically. So this is just the summary section where it's going to display the list of buckets that are available and what's your total storage and other things. So S3 is charged based on multiple factors and storage is one of the main factors. And when it comes to the pricing, there are different types of storage mechanisms that you can have in S3. So let's say you want to store the older logs, like logs older than 1 year, right? These logs are not required to be accessed very frequently, but you still need them for any kind of auditing purposes or any of those requirements, right? So in those cases, what you can do is you can move these files to something called as a Glacier tab. So in that case, what's going to happen is your storage cost is going to reduce significantly, given the disadvantage that retrieving these files is going to take a little bit longer. But given that you'll be able to save the cost, it still is a trade-off, right? Now let's get to creating a bucket. So over here, you'll be able to see the create bucket button. So once you click on that, specify a bucket name. Okay, and let's select the region as US East one. So here you'll be able to copy the configurations from another S3 bucket that you have already deployed, or you can choose to add them from scratch. So coming to object ownership, since we want the files of the bucket to be accessible by everybody over the internet, we're going to enable we're going to make it public, right? So for that, there are a couple of settings you need to do. So one of them is ACL, so access control list. So by using ACL, you'll be able to specify who has access to this bucket, right? Well, and then the other part is the block public access. Now, by default, all the S3 buckets that get created have been are designed to block public access to make sure that the general public cannot access your buckets. But in our case, since we are using it for hosting purpose, we're going to make that public. And once you disable this checkbox, is going to ask you, whether you're sure you need to enable the public access, because this is just a way that Amazon is trying to make sure that we know what we're doing. So acknowledge it. Coming to bucket versioning, so S3 has a lot of features in them. So let's just go through some of them. Like one of them is bucket versioning. So what is bucket versioning? So every time you upload a file, if you enable versioning, it's going to create a copy of, it's going to create a new version of the file. Let's say you upload file one today, right? And then tomorrow you upload the same file one, but you have updated the data inside that. So what bucket versioning is going to do is it's going to keep both the copies and it's going to show you by default, when you look at the console, it's going to show you the latest version. But if required, you can, see the previous versions. The other advantage it gives us is making sure that nobody accidentally deletes the file. So let's say somebody deletes file one by mistake, you will still be able to access the previous versions. The only time the file will be fully removed is if the user selects all the versions and deletes all of them. So right now we don't require bucket versioning. And tags is a generic AWS feature that's available in most of the services. You can use this to keep track of what are the microservices or the names of the microservices, or whether it's deployed from CloudFormation, or you can even use it for billing purposes. So that again depends on the use case. Now coming to encryption. Uh, S3 provides three different types of encryptions. So one is the default S3 encryption. So the key management and encrypting and decrypting the files is completely taken care by AWS. The other side, the second side of it is, or the second version of it is by using KMS keys. KMS is again another AWS service, key management service. So if you want to use the keys that are generated by KMS, so that is also possible. And the third type of encryption it supports is our own encryption mechanism. So you can use that in case of advanced encryption queries. So for us at this point, it's not required. So let's go ahead and create the bucket. Yeah. So you can see the bucket that it has created. Now, after creating the bucket, you need to update the properties to host the website. Now, let's go to the properties and scroll to the very end of it. So the website hosting is the last option that is there in the list. So let's go and enable it. Enable it. And when it comes to website hosting, there are two types of things you can do. One is to host the static website. The other one is to use it as a redirect object. So in case you want to configure something like, say, Amazon.com, when anybody types in, you want to move that to Amazon.in. So what you can do is you can probably have bucket configured for it, and every time the user hits .com, you can configure a redirect request, and you can do that. You can redirect the user to Amazon.in. So these kinds of things are possible by using it as a redirection object. So in our case, we want to host the static website, and we also need to specify, in case we are hosting the website, we need to specify what is the index and the error document. So let's just go with the default values. Well, right, and then save changes. So after you do that, and you get the message that the static website is enabled, when you scroll down, you'll be able to see the S3 link. So this is the place, this is the link that you'll be using and spreading it to the users. Now let's upload some files over here. So keep a note of this repo. So all the content for this webinar has been put in this GitHub. So over here, you can use this to upload the files, or you can use this. At the end, we'll see how the CI/CD pipeline works and things like that. So for now, download the code. Yeah. So here in getting started, under the website, you have the static files. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload this and see how the website looks. So S3 allows you to drag and drop the files. So use that. So I'm also going to open that in the terminal, and we'll be using that in the future. Right. So the S3 files are uploaded. And now when you go to the link that is provided by S3, you should be able to see the website. Right. So every time you upload a object to S3, you need to make sure whether it is public. Right. So select all the files, and under the actions, you have the option called make public by ICO. So once you do that, you'll be able to access them without any permissions. So now that it is enabled, let's reload, and here it is. So this is a simple static website. It's just plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Right? It's not having any React code as of now. So this is just to show that how we'll be able to use the S3 bucket to host the static applications. And next, we're going to see how Cloudfront plays a part in serving the website. So when you're using Cloudfront, what we're going to do is we're going to create something called as a distribution. So a distribution is the entity that is going to keep track of what is your source and how much caching is required, any other settings that you need to do as part of your distribution. So all that will be taken care of by it. And then after we create the distribution, we are going to upload a React application into this S3 bucket and see how CloudFront is going to react to that. Okay. Let's go to CloudFront. So under the services tab, search for CloudFront, and once you open that, you'll be landing into a page similar to this. And over here, let's say on the right side, you'll be able to see create distribution. So click on that link. Now coming to create distribution, the first option is going to ask is the origin domain, right? So for CloudFront, CloudFront is just working on the caching layer, right? So it's not going to have any kind of storage, or it's not going to have the source files. So that needs to be specified from somewhere. So in our case, we're going to use S3 as the source. So under the list, we can find the website that we just created. So you can use this as the as the source, and then coming to origin access identity. Now, for CloudFront to be able to access your S3 bucket, there are some permissions that needs to be added. Now, this is a common practice across all AWS services. Like if one AWS service needs to access another AWS service, you need to grant permissions from the source to the destination. So in other services, we use a service called IAM to be able to do it. And in CloudFront case, especially when you're connecting it to S3, we're going to use the bucket policy to be able to do it. Now, the origin access identity is an entity that we use to create to have a connection towards the S3 bucket. And then we're going to also upload an S3 bucket policy, which is going to tell that this CloudFront can access this S3 bucket. So let's create a new origin access identity. Yeah. And here you have the option, whether we want to update the policy manually or whether we can let AWS update the policy. So let's just let AWS do it. Now coming to the caching behavior. Now in the caching behavior, by default, all the files get cached, and if required, you can have different caching mechanisms based on different folder paths, and all those options, all those things are possible. Now, viewer control policy is whether you want your users to see only the HTTPS site or both of them, or let's say if they type http.amazon.com, it needs to redirect to https.amazon.com. So those kinds of things, and what are the methods that are allowed. So these are all some of the things that you can configure as part of the CloudFormation. And I'm sorry, as part of the CloudFront. The other interesting feature that CloudFront has is function associates. So basically, Lambda is an AWS service that acts as a serverless compute layer. Okay. Now, what you can do with CloudFront is you can connect an Lambda anytime a file is being fetched. So there are four places that you can enable this. So your request response, origin request and origin response. So anytime a user is going to request for a file, you can run a Lambda function to take any sort of action. So where this will be useful is, let's say one of the use cases is you are running an international website, and when a user from India logs in, you want to show him the pricing in INR, and when a user from US logs in, you want to show him the price in USD. So what you can do is you can enable or you can configure the Lambda function to the viewer request, and what will happen is when a request comes, like when anybody tries to fetch the website, it's going to hit the Lambda. And in Lambda, you'll get information on where is the source, like the IP address or the location, like the geographical location of the user. And based on that, you can send the response, that it must be in IN or it must be in USD. So when the file is being fetched, you will also get like what it should display in, like what currency the website should display, whether it's INR or USD. And based on that, the front end can load. But apart from this, you can also use it for logging, auditing purposes, any kind of special SEO that you want to perform. So the scope is pretty wide, right? And let's keep the rest of the settings default and create the distribution. Now, creating a distribution takes some time, especially the any modifications you do, because again, this is connected to the global network, right? So anytime you create a distribution, all the files would be passed on to the rest of the locations, and that needs to be updated. The DNS record needs to be updated. So it's a lot of work. So it's going to take some time for the distribution to get created. So while the distribution is in modifying state, let's go through some of the rest of the options that are there. So origins. So like I said, origins is the one that we created some time back. So this is going to help you to connect to the S3 bucket. Okay. And if you see the options over here, you'll be able to select what is the origin path and other options. Okay, so this is the origin that it has created. Now, in your S3 bucket that we have connected to the Cloudfront, we should be able to also see the bucket policy that was updated by the origin access. So this is the bucket. Let's see if the policy is there. Yeah. So in bucket policy, you can see that this has been added by AWS. So here it points that the principal, which is the who's going to access this bucket is the CloudFront. And if you see this ID, that will correspond to the distribution ID. So it basically means only this distribution will be able to access it, this ID. So that is with respect to that. And the other options you have as part of CloudFront is behaviors. So this is the caching pattern that I said. So either it can be for all the files, or in case you want to customize that based on your specific requirements, you'll be able to do that. And error pages based on specific HTTP error codes, you'll be able to access, you'll be able to configure error pages. Coming to geographic restrictions. So using CloudFront, one of the things what you can do is you can either whitelist or blacklist a couple of countries. Let's say you want to limit the users to India. Like you don't want, I'm sorry. So you don't want users apart from India to be able to access your website. So let's say you can create something called as an allow list, and from the countries brought down, you can just add India. So once you do this, only people from India will be able to access the website. And let's say uh, you want only Indian users and US users to be able to access it. So these sort of restrictions and configurations is possible. So by allow list, you're only allowing a specific list of countries to be able to access it. And by block list, what you're going to do is all the other countries except for the ones mentioned over here will not be able to access the website. Let's see if the deployment is complete. Yeah, it's still being deployed. And the last thing is the tags. So like I mentioned in the S3 bucket, while creating the S3 bucket, tags is a feature that is available for most of the AWS services. And you can use it to keep track of what all services are there, part of one specific microservice, or you can use it for costing purposes, or you can use it to see the usage of the specific service. Okay, so the distribution is now deployed. Now we should be able to access the website. Yeah, as you can see, so this is the same files that we had uploaded in the S3 bucket. So instead of accessing it from the S3 bucket, now we are accessing it as part of the CloudFront URL. Now, um, yeah. So here, the other thing you can see is it's an HTTPS link, and this is again internally handled by AWS. While creating the cloud formation, again, you have, while if you're specifying a custom domain, you have the option to import the SSL certificate, or you can use, there's another service called ACM, which is, I think, Amazon Certificate Manager, which can, through which you can generate your own certificate and use that. So this is with respect to using CloudFront to connect to your S3 and host the website. So now the next step, what we'll do is we're going to build the React application and upload those files into the S3 bucket and see how it changes the application. Let's go back to the bucket. So again, pointing to the repo, the uh, under getting started website. So these are the set of static files that we have uploaded. And now we're going to upload the React application, which is under the folder called as S3 website. Okay. And I've already downloaded it in my Visual Studio. So start, I'm just going to build the application and we can get started. So let me just move this so you can see the commands. Oh, sorry. So first, let's install all the packages that are required for this application. So it's just a simple React application that's going to show you a set of tables. So in the meantime, let me just explain the S3 structure. So um, I think it is almost done. Yeah, it is done. Now we're going to build the application. Now, when we build the application, you'll be able to see a build folder that is being generated. Now, what this procedure does is in React, generally we write files as part of the JS6 syntax. So that is again not interpreted by all the browsers, right? So it needs to be in a regular JS version for the browsers to be able to use it. So the build process is basically going to convert these JSX files into JS files, which can be used in the website. Uh, let's see the files. So these are all the files it has generated. Now we're going to upload that back into the S3 bucket and see how it's going to change. So let's delete the older files. So every delete, S3 is going to ask you to type the confirmation. Right. So all the files are successfully deleted. Go back to the home page and just drag and drop the files. So you can see the progress. It's about around 6 MB and that's getting uploaded. So once the upload is done, again, we need to make all the files public. Uh, so, so select the files and make them public. Okay. So now when you try to reload the application, yeah. So this is the static website that we have created. So it's just a website that is going to get a display a set of table. Now this data is what to say is hard coded as part of the application. It's just a JSON data which we are going to loop through to create the table. Now, in the next session, what we're going to do is instead of getting the data, instead of loading the hard-coded data, which is there part of the front-end application, we're going to replace that with an API, and we're going to use that to connect to a Lambda, which is going to scan the table and get this entire list and send it as a response to the API. So that is going to be the next webinar. So for this webinar, we have just hard-coded the data and using it to deploy the application. Now, this is the S3 hosted link, and now we'll see what is happening in the Cloudfront hosted link. So here you can see that even if you reload, it's going to be the same, right? You're still getting the old data. So this is because of the caching, right? So using CloudFront, you have already cached the previous files. Now each file that you cache is going to have a TTL, basically a time to live. So within that time period, unless you are going to force it to refetch the files, it's going to get you the files which are there in the cache. Now, how do you make sure that you get the fresh files from CloudFront? So go back to your CloudFront, and in your distribution, you have the option called invalidations. So what invalidation does is when you create an invalidation, you can specify the path. So let's say you have modified only a few files in your S3. In that case, you can specify the files that you have modified in this format, and it's going to invalidate those files, meaning it's going to remove those files from all the caches in its register, right? So in our case, since we have deleted all the files and we are kind of re-uploading everything, we're going to invalidate everything. So once you create an invalidation, you can see that it's in progress. So again, this process is basically removing all the files that have been cached in all the edge locations. So only after that, you'll be able to get the fresh files. So after this, what's going to happen is when we click on this link, again, CloudFront is going to ask S3 for this files, get it from there, and then serve it to us. So that time is going to be a fresh set of files rather than the cache content that we are seeing. So the invalidation is complete, and let's see if it works. Yeah. So now we can see that using the same CloudFront link, after invalidation, when you reload it, you will be getting the fresh set of data. So this is with respect to using CloudFront and S3 together to give you the optimal performance website. Now, the other thing as part of the webinar that I want to show you guys is on the repo. So the repo that I'm sharing right now is configurable, meaning that you can fork the website and update the parameters.json file. And what it's going to do is going to deploy the S3, the CloudFront, and the website that you just saw in your AWS account. So for that, what you need to do is step one is fork the website. So after you fork the website, uh, in your settings, what you need to do is add two keys. So under secrets, so it's basically under settings, you have secrets. So in secrets, you need to add AWS access key ID and AWS secret key in the same name, right? So this you get by creating an IAM user and getting the programmatic access for that user. So by that, you'll be able to get these two keys. So what you need to do is force the repository in your repo, add these two keys, and after adding those two keys, go back to the code and update the parameters file. So in the parameters, I've just given some sample data. So all you need to do is edit this to be able to deploy the website. So, right. So once you give the changes, commit it. So once you do this, under actions, you'll be able to see your pipeline running. So what is happening is the repository is already having something called as a pipeline file. So what it does is it has a set of commands that it's going to run after you commit the code. So here the set of commands are going to be to create CloudFormation. So before that, about CloudFormation. So CloudFormation is a service used to orchestrate AWS services. So basically, you provide something like a YAML or a JSON file, which has the syntaxes required to create create AWS services. And once you give that, it's going to create an entity called stack. And in using that stack, you deploy the AWS services. Now, the other advantage of using CloudFormation is you can control all the resources in the stack at the same place. So let's say in our case, for this simple website itself, we are using S3, we are using CloudFront, right? Two different services. Now, if you have to create them manually, we saw the process, right? And also, while deleting, you have to go manually to all the web pages and make sure you delete them sequentially. So this can be a time-consuming process, right? So that is why we have tools like services like CloudFormation, which are going to ease up this process. Now here you can see this is the creation status of the CloudFormation. Now, in the console, when we created the services, it was just CloudFront and S3, right? You just saw two tabs. But when you're actually deploying an application, there are different services. Like the origin access identity will be tagged as a different service. The CloudFront distribution is a different service. So, and the S3 bucket policy that you're creating is a different service. So all these things, when you're doing it in the console, it is taken care by AWS. Like they handle it in the backend. So that's the kind of abstraction the console provides. But when you're using CloudFormation or any other SDK mechanism to deploy, you need to make sure that all these services are in place. So the by using CloudFormation, you have one place to create all these services. Just one file you create and it's going to create all these services. And at the end of it, when you want to delete it, you just have to delete the stack, and CloudFormation is going to delete all the services that were created as part of that configuration file. So this is kind of some of the advantages you get by using CloudFormation. Now let's see how the CloudFormation stack looks while this is being deployed. So the CloudFormation name is something with Sandy. Yeah. So here you can see the CloudFormation stack, right? And it says creation in progress. So when you look at the template file is how you specify the JSON or the YAML file. So here you can see the syntaxes for each of the services that you have created. So the logic of CloudFormation is you specify an ID or an identifier, and under that you specify the keywords that are required to create the service. So in this case, we want to create the S3 bucket, so we have given it like this, right? Similarly, if you want to create other AWS services, let's say you want to create a Dynamodb table. The easiest way to search for the syntax is type colon colon and DynamoDB, right? So probably the first or the second result is going to be the CloudFormation. So here we can see the first result is the CloudFormation page. Okay, so this is the naming convention that you have to use while creating the CloudFormation for DynamoDB table. Now under this, you'll be able to see all the properties that it supports. In this case, let's say key schema. Key schema is where you specify what are all the primary keys, secondary keys, attributes that you need for your table, all those kinds of information. So similarly, for each one of them, you'll be able to see what are all the fields that you can pass and what is the value for it, what are all the value types. So here you can see a string, but in cases where it's a nested JSON or things like that, you'll be able to see the complete information when you click on it. Okay. So yeah, one more thing which I wanted to mention was all these keys, once you scroll through them or when you click on it, it's going to give you a detail about that attribute and it's going to tell you whether it's a mandatory field or not. So in this case, attribute definitions is a conditional field, meaning it depends on some other key. So if you're specifying key A, then key B should be present, something like that. And if you see for billing mode, for example, it's going to say required no. So these are again optional fields that you need to mention if you want to override the existing configuration or override the default configurations. So in this way, you'll be able to create your CloudFormation, and your CloudFormation is going to increase over time as your application develops. Like every time you need to create a new service, or anytime you want to add a new business logic, you're going to create different AWS services. So you can update the existing template that you have, and you can deploy it. So once you do that, CloudFormation, what you also need to do is specify the stack name. So CloudFormation is going to know that it's an existing stack and is going to update the set of services rather than creating everything from scratch. So it's going to keep track of what is the current state of the service, what is the new state that you have provided, and what is the change it needs to do. So CloudFormation is going to take care of all these things. So our pipeline is now complete, and we should be able to get the new CloudFront URL. So as part of this stack, we can see the resources that it has deployed, the S3 bucket, the policy required for the CloudFront distribution, the CloudFront distribution itself, and the origin access identity. So all these four services are deployed, and to delete them, all you have to do is click on the delete stack. Now let's see if the website is working. So this is a new link that has been provided. So yes, it works. Yeah. So to summarize everything that we have done so far, so we created an S3 bucket, used that to host the website. We uploaded HTML, CSS files to render a static website. And then we created a CloudFront distribution, connected that to S3, and saw how the CloudFront URL works, the different options that are there in CloudFront. And then we uploaded we built a React application and uploaded that to the S3 file to show you how the static files are uploaded in case it's a React or any other kind of any other framework that you use, right? And then we saw how CloudFront invalidation works, and how you'll be able to remove the cache that has on the previously cached files, like how you'll be able to remove them. And then we saw how to automate all of this deployment using CloudFormation. Now, just to repeat the last part, I know this can get confusing for the automation part. So all you need to do is fork the repository, right? And after that, you'll be able to basically it's going to create a copy of this repository for you. And then under settings, go to actions. I'm sorry, go to secrets. Go to secrets and add these two keys and provide the respective values for it. After that, go back to code and edit the parameters.json. So you can keep the region as US East 1 itself, and only the bucket name and the stack name you would have to change. So once you do that and push, you'll be able to see under actions, you'll have a workflow that is running. So with that, your CloudFormation would have started the deployment. So this will be the name of the thing that you specify in the parameters file. And at the end of it, as part of the outputs in that stack, you'll be able to get the final website link. So that kind of concludes what we are covering at this section, in this webinar. So let me give you a gist of what we're going to do in the next webinar. So before that, do we have any questions so far?
No, Sandeep.
Okay. So coming to what we're going to do in the next session. So the application that I showed you, which is the serverless leave approval application. So as part of that, we covered how the website hosting works. So in the next session, we're going to see how API Gateway, Lambda, and DynamoDB work. So for a user flow, what's going to happen is first you need an authentication mechanism, right? So one service that's going to generate the keys for you, access ID token keys, and you're going to keep track of the user session for it. So for that, we're going to use Cognito, and then we're going to see how we can use API Gateway to invoke a Lambda function. The Lambda function again being the compute layer. From the Lambda function, we're going to get some information from the tables and process that in any way required and send it back to the API Gateway as the response. And we're going to use DynamoDB tables, which is the NoSQL version that is provided by AWS, and we're going to see how we'll be able to create the data in them, how we're going to access them, and that entire agenda. And then we're also going to come across an interesting service called Step Function, which is a service used for orchestration of different AWS services together. So in this case, we're going to orchestrate a couple of lambdas, and we're going to have logic states, the less than 2 days or greater than 2 days logic. And all we'll see how step function also can be integrated directly with API gateway and how the user is going to experience this interaction. So yeah, that concludes the session.